Good afternoon, families. My name is Heather Deer, and I am the Assistant Director of Parent and Family Programs at William and Mary. I am happy to welcome you to our family webinar series. Our webinar series is designed to provide you with information about the student experience and opportunities your student may take advantage of. Our session today includes a discussion about academic success and ways to support your student during and after midterm exams that will last approximately 30 minutes. At the end of the discussion, there will be time for you to ask questions. We ask that you keep your microphones muted for the duration of the presentation in order to maintain the best sound quality for all attendees. We have learned that the best way for you to communicate your questions is to send them via the Q&A feature in Zoom. You will find this feature at the bottom of your screen labeled Q&A. You can type your questions here. Feel free to submit questions during the discussion. I will serve as the moderator and ask our presenters as many questions as we have time for at the end of the presentation. At this time, I will turn it over to Mark Sykes, our Vice Dean for Student Success, who will introduce our presenters. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Heather. Parents, I'm so thrilled that you are joining us today. Over the years, we often find that this is a very busy time of year for students. And often these are the folks around the chairs today that we're having conversation with of how we're supporting our students. I thought it would be a great idea for us to have some dialogue. Each of the presenters will tell you a little bit of information about themselves and some of the programs they work with. And then we have developed a set of questions about the experience that we can answer and hopefully have dialogue about. Again, my name is Mark Sykes. I'm the Vice Dean for Student Success. This is my 14th year at William and Mary. And I have to tell you, of all the places that I have been, I have truly had an experience here that we care for our students and we are truly connected to their student success. And I have wonderful conversations and connections to each of these folks around the table. So I'll get started by asking Janice to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Janice Zeman, and I actually wear two hats at William & Mary. One is a faculty hat. I am a professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences. My area is actually, interestingly enough, child and adolescent development, so it's really fun to be working in a college population, and I have been a professor since 1992, which makes me really old, and I've been doing this a really long time. Now, in the last 4 years, I have been 100% time in the dean's office, and this is on the academic side of the house. So I'm dean for undergraduate studies. And what that means is that I oversee enrollment management, exceptions to rules. I partner with the Dean of Students office, oversee the Office of Academic Advising, basically all things academically oriented, problems that come up or concerns. I'm usually the person eventually that gets looped into some of those matters. So your students will get lots of emails from me around midterm times, around filling out course evaluations of their faculty members. So they're also familiar with my name. So I'm really excited to be part of this roundtable, or not such a roundtable, but talking with my fellow colleagues here.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Shelley Lorenzo. I'm the Associate Director for the Office of Academic Advising, so work really closely with Janice Zeman, as well as our colleagues in the Dean of Students office to support students. Most of you might be aware that our model at William & Mary is a faculty advisor model, so our students are assigned to faculty members as their advisor of record, but we also have 3 professional advisors in our office that serve as a backbone of support for those students. So we support our faculty if they have questions and concerns, especially really nitpicky policy issues, but we're also available to serve and support students as well, especially when they're going through the midterm process. If they have questions or concerns, we'll also be entering registration at the end of March and early April. So again, our office is really there to support students through that process. And also, I think it's worth you all noting that, again, all of these offices work really closely together to make sure that our students have the supports that they need to be successful.
Thank you, Shelley. My name is Bhavik Castro. I am the Director of Student Services and the Assistant to the Dean of Students in the Dean of Students office. I work very closely with, again, all of the folks sitting here. I represent the Dean of Students office on various committees that work to help students get exceptions to policies, on most of those committees with Dean Zeman here. Um, I also support with, we have an Office of Enrollment Support Services within the Dean of Students office. We offer drop-in hours that I help to facilitate at least once or twice a day, so that when students have issues or they have questions, they can come in and be able to ask these questions and figure out who are the appropriate resources that they may be able to get plugged into. We do a lot of exception to policy type of things within our office. We have a student emergency notification policy that we run when students miss class or have some kind of extenuating circumstance that arises. We assist students. I know we're focused more on this part of the semester right now and midterms as they arise, but we do also help to facilitate final exam schedule adjustments along with Shelley's office. We kind of collaborate on working through that and just offer general support. Additionally, as part of my role in the Dean of Students office, I do serve as one of the deans that is a dean on call for more crisis situations multiple times a semester, and also help to respond to general care reports when faculty or other community members submit a care report. Maybe a student has been missing classes for a couple sessions, and then we facilitate some support for those students and try to reach out to them and see how we can help them re-engage and be successful through whatever they're navigating or dealing with.
Hello, my name is Shanae Owens, and I am the Associate Director for the Center for Student Diversity. In my role, I plan the diversity programming within the center as well as throughout campus for campus-wide programming. We also do different trainings on campus and plan diversity-focused trips throughout. We make trips to DC and different social justice by faith trips. We work with our campus ministers throughout the Williamsburg community and just provide a sense of belonging for students here on campus. I also coordinate our PLUS pre-orientation program, and PLUS stands for Preparing for Life as a University Student. And that program is geared towards underrepresented and underserved students just to help them get acclimated to campus as they are admitted to William and Mary, and gives them a start the summer before their freshman year.
Okay, thanks everybody for those helpful introductions. Again, we've come up with a series of questions that I thought would be appropriate to share information with parents, especially during this really busy time for students. We are seeing a number of increased care reports coming from faculty members, RAs, other residents, other students, just of a general concern. And part of our role is to reach out in a cooperative manner to students and really provide them the tips and resources that they need to be successful. So I'm just going to sort of look at some of these questions and ask, and then just open it up for anybody in our group for comment. One of the things that I hear a lot from students during this kind of busy time is my students' main concern is that they're really feeling overwhelmed by all the assignments that are due. How would you respond in your capacity, colleague, executive group, as to parents to give advice for them for how that they can help their student?
The advice that I usually give to students is to break it down. Know that not every class is the same, not every study tip is the same. So how you prepare for one exam is not going to be the same that you prepare for another. I also tap into my resources in academic enrichment, and I often refer the students to the graduate assistants to have coaching sessions so that they're able to go through different time management, which is something that you have to reevaluate what time management means for you at every stage of your life. And that doesn't mean every 10 years, that means every year of your life. So looking at time management, looking at what you need to break down per class, per semester, and just reevaluating and being okay that you may not know how to study for that particular exam, for that particular class. So being open to asking for help and just not knowing that you don't know the resources.
One of the things that I think is important, and I think, Janice, I want you to comment on this, is students often feel as if they're alone when they are the only one that may be struggling in a class or the only one that may be feeling a little overwhelmed. The first resource I think that students can have is each other. I think especially connecting with that orientation aide or the RA or somebody that has been through this particular experience before is very helpful. I think too, and I'll ask Janice to comment on this, um, reaching out to your faculty member, those that are in your classroom, I think are really important. Janice, tell us a little bit about sort of your experience, sort of connecting with students who may be feeling overwhelmed.
Right. I think that's an excellent idea is that the first line or second line, maybe, of defense when you are feeling overwhelmed is to talk to the person, in this case, your faculty member. If you're having difficulties in class, if you're not understanding something, one of the, I guess, advice that I give to my own advisees, but just in general, is ask sooner than you think. So don't wait until you are completely freaked out or behind or just realizing you're really not getting something. It's much better to, and sometimes it's a confidence issue, sometimes it's pride, sometimes it's just, I know I can do this. The reality is the bar is much higher at William and Mary, and a lot of things will come together. Sometimes, unfortunately, the time you might get sick, you might have unexpected things that come up, and you're in a situation where you really are a bit behind the eight ball. So better to ask the professor or for help sooner than later, or to get into a study group or go over to the Writing Resource Center or Tribe Tutor Zone. Get help as soon as you expect that you are floundering a little bit. One thing that we'll be doing during midterm times is that students will get a grade, not a grade as an A, B, C, D, E, F kind of grade, but more marginal, acceptable, or unsatisfactory. This is a great opportunity for students to go, okay, I thought I got this material, but clearly I'm not, or it's marginal. I need to go get help. And so the professor is a great source for that to say you could do it this way, that way, or suggest a tutor. Or as Mark said, perhaps going and finding other students who've been through this before. Students just need to know that they can do the material and it's not a problem to ask for help. In fact, that's actually a sign of strength.
You know, one of the things that I will say, especially, I have two teenage students, and I spend a lot of time around the world talking to families. And one of the things that I like to really share with families is you know your child better than any of us know your child. And you kind of know if they normally text you 5 times a day and you haven't heard from them in a couple of days, maybe something's going on. Um, I always say to parents, reach out to your student. And if you really feel as if something is wrong and they're not communicating with you, you too can fill out a care report. There are resources. I'll just easily give you the web address. It's wm.edu/dean of students, or you can go to any sort of the William and Mary websites and put in care report. And the first link that comes up will be the information on how to submit a care report. If you feel as if somebody at the university needs to reach out to your student because they are struggling, that's kind of what we're here for. And we really want to help that student through an early intervention before it gets to the point where we have an urgent or a crisis situation. So anytime that we can reach out to a student and provide them the support that they may need is always better than when it's in crisis. Now, if it is in crisis, we will work with you and the family to sort of work through that, to help them and figure out what are the next steps and how are we going to re-engage them when they're ready to reconnect. Another question I usually get around this time is I have a midterm coming up and I'm feeling sick. What do I do?
Call Bhavik.
Call Bhavik.
So yes, as I was mentioning before, we do have a student emergency notification policy within our office. Again, Mark just referred you right to our Dean of Students website, where a lot of our forms and our requests and petitions live. We do get a lot of these questions that come in, especially this time of year when students are having exams and they're missing class for various reasons, whether they have a personal matter or they have a conflict with some other thing that they're involved in, or they have an illness. And we navigate all of these a bit differently. And we actually work very closely with Dean Zeman on communicating with faculty and what the expectations are and what we are hoping that faculty have included in their syllabi for students to be able to use to navigate. A lot of our professors, they want to know that the Dean of Students Office is aware when students are dealing with or navigating things. So they may get a lot of suggestions of come to the Dean of Students Office or fill out a form. When it comes to general illnesses and things that don't escalate to like a hospitalization, those are things that we would like students to try to navigate with their professors. If they're hitting a wall, if they're having difficulty in having that conversation or finding agreement there, we are more than happy to try to either work through our office or through the undergraduate studies office to try to navigate some of those conversations. If there's any difficulty. But a majority of our professors are very welcoming and open to, as long as the students are communicating these things to them, they're open to working with them around some of these illnesses, especially the more lower level cases that aren't escalating to hospitalizations or more. When we have extenuating circumstances for students that, a student was hospitalized or an emergency occurred and they missed an exam or they missed some classes or they need to, we do suggest that they complete the emergency notification request form that's on our website, or that they just call in or come in so that we can hear a little bit more about what's going on. Once we've evaluated what's going on and we've determined that it's an acceptable reason to be able to miss classes or that's something that the Dean of Students Office can support, we will send out a notification to all that students' professors and let them know, hey, this student is having an illness or is having an emergency, and we ask the professors to work with them. We do remind the students all the time that that at the end of the day, the professor and their syllabus is what they need to abide by, and that when we are sending these requests, we're simply notifying their professors that our office is aware. If there was any documentation needed to be collected, we've collected it, and we're making you aware, and we are simply asking their professors to work with them. And we do remind the students that it's then their responsibility to follow up with their professors and communicate. Similar to the point that Dean Zeman was making earlier, we definitely want to encourage our students to build those relationships with their professors, begin communicating with them before they really start having any issues arise, so that they feel more comfortable communicating when there is something that they are struggling with.
I would add one thing to that, Bobak. The student should really have that syllabus, I wouldn't say memorized, but they really need to know each class in the syllabus and the attendance policy and sickness policy. A lot of faculty will give, for example, 3 excused absences, which means that they don't have to say why they're not coming to class. And the student needs to realize that those should be saved for the days when they're sick. Once in a while, I'll get a student who calls me and says that faculty is, being strict and they have been sick and they're making them take one of their excused absences. And I was like, well, that's actually what they're for. And so these absences that you're allowed to miss a certain number of classes before it starts affecting your grade, those really do need to be for days when you're sick, not for the days when you sleep in, or hopefully you're not sleeping in. But that's the type of thing that's built into the syllabus, because we don't have sick notes. We don't have other ways of providing external validation of somebody being sick.
One of the things that I will share with you families is that I'm very excited to say is that our faculty are also submitting care reports to the Dean of Students Office when they feel as if an issue is rising beyond something of a general welfare or general sickness kind of issue. I'm very proud that our faculty care enough to actually communicate with us so that we can ensure that your students are having the necessary resources for us to connect with them, just to make sure that they're doing okay and that they are managing. So anybody else have any comment about how they've worked with students in that capacity before I go on to our next question? So Bobak, this is probably one for you. Can a student drop a course at this point in the semester?
So while the ad drop deadline was January 31st, I believe, so that is the period where students can make adjustments to their schedule and test some of the classes out. So once that deadline has passed, students can no longer drop a class. However, we do have the option of them withdrawing, and there is a difference between the two. When students drop classes, those classes no longer show up on a student's record. When students withdraw from classes, they will earn a W for that class, and it will be on their transcript. So at this point in the semester, students cannot drop a class on their own. They do have the ability to withdraw from a class. However, they must, in most cases, maintain 12 credits. So they will need to still be full-time after withdrawing from a class. In the case that a student believes that they have an extenuating circumstance or a reason why they should have an exception to the drop deadline and be allowed to late drop a class, or they would like to withdraw from a class and it will put them under 12 credits, so they want an exception to that policy, that is something they should then come back to our office with. We have a committee called the Committee on Academic Status, or CAS, which we run from the Dean of Students office, but the committee is made up of faculty from all across campus, and it has representatives from Janice's office as well as our office. And so this committee will allow the students to petition and ask for an exception to the policy and allow them to either late drop or allow them to withdraw from a class and put them in an underload, which is under 12 credits. Typically, to be able to get an exception to this, a student needs to have an extenuating circumstance. Usually that is a medical reason. Oftentimes that is a personal hardship that's an extenuating circumstance. Or sometimes, depending on how many semesters a student has been here and what their situation and what they're dealing with, may escalate to that level. But essentially, at this point in the semester, a student would need permission to be able to drop a class, but they may have access to withdraw on their own.
This is also a busy time of the semester where students are meeting with their academic advisor and preparing to register for classes for next semester. Shelley, do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of the process of what students will be going through over the next couple of weeks where they're beginning to sort of navigate academics?
Sure. So one of the things, especially for those of you that are parents of our first year students, for students' first 3 semesters at William and Mary, they do have to receive a PIN from their academic advisor in order to register for classes. And this is really just an insurance policy on both ends, that the student is receiving advice to help them build their course plan so they know that they're on the right track. And then for faculty members to know that students aren't building their plan without receiving proper advising and proper support as part of that. So I would anticipate within the next 2 weeks or so, obviously spring break is in there, that your student will be receiving an email from their faculty advisor, encouraging them to schedule an appointment with them so they can talk through planning for the fall, and also what's going on in the current semester as well. And again, our office is another layer of support, especially for students that might be pulling together a couple of different disciplines, maybe a double major or a major and a minor. Sometimes they like to go through what does all of that look like, and so our office is available to support students with that as well. For students that are already in their major, they don't have to meet with their major advisor, but those folks are available as a resource and a support. And the nice thing about the major advisors is they tend to have a lot more insight into the specific curriculum. And so if this class that they need for the major is only offered in the spring, then no, they can't take it in the fall. They'll take it next spring and that sort of thing. So even though they're not required to meet, we still really encourage students to meet with their advisor at every registration period to ensure that they're on track for graduation.
Shelley, what else is going on? I know that you have a team of professionals that help students. When did typically you see students come into academic advising when they're outside of sort of their faculty appointments? And what sort of conversations do you typically have with them?
Sure. So we obviously are available all year to meet with students at any point, and the conversations will vary. Like I mentioned earlier, sometimes students just want to double check something, so they want to make sure that with this major and minor, that they'll be on track for a timely graduation, or they're trying to figure out how a study abroad might play into their plans, or if they need to take a leave, for example, for an internship during a semester. We'll support students in those scenarios as well. Related to what Dean Zeman and Bobak mentioned, anytime a student is looking at some sort of exception to policies or the curriculum, our office and our advisors are available to support students during those conversations as well. So whether that's submitting forms and petitions, we understand that can be really daunting for students. And so our advisors are available and willing to sit down and go through it and help them map it out to ensure that they understand what they're asking for and how to proceed from there. Our office also has a really close relationship with the registrar's office. So if the registrar's office stumbles upon something on a student's transcript, they'll refer them to our office to to talk through that issue. So one of the nice things about our team is that we're always available year round for students to provide support for them just whenever they need it.
That's great. Now, I will say that we've got an open application out there, Shanae, for a leadership opportunity for students. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the organizations that you work with and some of the things that they do, and what sort of leadership opportunity is out there right now for available to students?
So I work very closely with the Plus program. That is the first program that I'll talk about. So initially, with the way a student enters into the Plus program, they would apply as an admitted student into William and Mary. The Plus application opens up in May, which is also the day, May 1st, when students are able to deposit to accept their offer to William and Mary. Then the program usually starts, it's a week-long program, either in June or July, depending on the year. They spend a week here with me. We have great time together. But the program is no longer just that 1 week. We have expanded it where it's throughout your freshman year, where students have an opportunity to have monthly workshops to help them stay engaged throughout their first year here at William and Mary. Then as you enter into your sophomore year, we have a Plus externship during spring break where we take a trip to DC and we partner with the Washington Center, and students are able to shadow professionals, normally William and Mary alum, and just get a dose of what it's like to be in a career field that they're interested in. So that's an opportunity during their sophomore year. Then a lot of our Plus participants turn around and become Plus counselors. So right now we have our applications open for students who are interested in becoming Plus counselors and are able to give back to the incoming freshmen that are coming in. So in this capacity, one, it is a week-long commitment to stay on campus with the students and be a part in this part excuse me to be part of this experience with the first year students. But it's not something that you're just like, hey, I'm here for 9 days and then I'm gone. It's something that you're committed to spend that time with that student, go through their freshman year with, and then kind of just stay with them throughout their time here at William and Mary. So it's not a one and done. It's that you're committing to be a part of their experience here at William and Mary. So that's just one part of the way that I work directly with students. But I also advise the President's Council, which are our diversity-focused organizations here on campus. So student organizations that include some of our Black Greek organizations or Greek letter organizations on campus, some of our recognized student organizations, and just helping them find their way and just giving them a step in terms of leadership opportunities throughout campus.
Great. Okay, I think it's time that I'm going to turn the program back over to Heather, and she's going to ask us some of your questions, and hopefully we'll have a round robin response.
Wonderful. Now is the time to use that Q&A feature in Zoom and ask us all the questions for our experts. As you can see, we have a variety of perspectives here in the room today, so go ahead and send us those questions and I'll begin moderating. One question I have, a few of you mentioned that this is a busy time for our students. How do we support our students holistically outside of just their academic life? What resources are available for students who may be feeling this busyness during this time of year?
So, through the Center for Student Diversity, although we have programming, although we have different trainings and events like that, we also have couches, we also have TVs, and we have the opportunities for students to just reserve the space. And that doesn't mean that you have to have this academic programming that you want to do. It's also a place for students to just show up and just have a space for them to be themselves. So students come to just do their homework or not do their homework, come to eat lunch, hang out in between classes. So it's just a time for students to just be themselves and just have a space that's outside of the library or academic building. So that's the space that we provide for students to just be.
There's a lot of opportunities out there, especially over in the Mcleod Wellness Center that is right beside our Sadler Center in the middle of campus. They provide a lot of programming, whether it is yoga in the afternoon or wellness activities to really help students benefit from needing to take a break. It also houses our counseling center and the student health center. And they have appointments available for students that may need to process something that's going on. But to me, much more the wellness. It is really sort of making those connections with the folks that you need to make connections with at this point, and reaching out to anyone that can provide some assistance. I think is really important. It is a busy time of the semester, but as I can say, we have been here for a number of years, all of us, and I think that. The feeling of I'm the busiest is one of the feelings that I think especially our first year students feel, especially around this time. And so again, we ask them to sort of reach out in whatever capacity that they may need assistance with so that we can connect with them and provide that assistance. But it's also realizing that this is a short period of a busy time before spring break happens, and hopefully they'll take a break in that and really be able to relax in the next couple of weeks.
Wonderful. What are the approximate dates of midterm exams?
It really varies. So it seems that March break kind of hits right in the middle. So there will be a rush, I would say, the end of this week and all of next week. Then there's March break. And then when students come back, there'll be another busy period that week afterwards. It's really hard to determine. And as a faculty member, it's always that conundrum. Do you stress everybody out before they leave for break? Or do you think, oh, they'll have a whole week to study, so I will give their assignments that Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday and ruin their break because they're having to work? So it really does just depend on the class and the material there is. And it just every year is going to be different for different students when that busy period hits.
Thank you.
I'm gonna add on really quickly. This is more of a personal add-on. What I didn't add earlier is that I did go to William and Mary. I graduated in 2009. And so a lot of the things that folks are saying here, I took advantage of when I was an undergraduate student here. One thing that I found that I thought was a great idea that I found difficult was one semester I did all my classes on Tuesday and Thursday. And I thought, wow, I'll have a 4-day weekend every week and that'll be amazing until midterms hit, which because my classes were only 2 days a week meant that I had a lot of exams on the same day. So I think being mindful of some of those things when you're 18 and you haven't had the experience and it's difficult to be mindful of that is to spread some things out and to try to plan things out as best you can to make sure that you have time to give to all of your responsibilities. And then also, like everyone else said on the panel, giving yourself some time and ability and spaces where you can be yourself and where you can focus on things outside of classes, whether that's going to the Center for Student Diversity and eating your lunch there, or it's going to the Wellness Center and participating in one of the programs they have there, or it's going to the Rec Center and just playing basketball for an hour or whatever might be something, or participating in a student organization that gets your mind off of some of the academically focused things that you have going here.
My next question is, so my student calls me after an exam and it really just did not go well at all. What are those next steps for the student to finish the semester strong?
Great question. As Dean Zeman mentioned earlier, I think one of the keys out the gate is for students to understand their syllabus and how their grade is determined. So you do have some classes where it really is a midterm and a final and that's it. And then you have other classes where it's tons of little projects and that all culminates in their final grade. So I think the first thing to do is kind of a situational awareness. What does this mean? How could this play out? I also encourage my students not to panic until they actually get the grade. I think we've all been in situations like this where our gut reaction is to panic, and then the final grade for that thing comes in and it wasn't as bad as we thought. So also understanding that it might not actually be as bad as they feel in that moment right afterwards. If they do end up with a grade that they are concerned about, like Dean Zeman mentioned, follow up with the professors. Our professors come here because they want to work with students, and they are heavily invested in the undergraduate educational experience. And so I think part of that is reminding students that professors are people, and go to their office hours and talk to them and get their feedback. They're always willing to help where they can. So encouraging them to take advantage of those resources. And like other folks have mentioned, we have a writing resource center on campus. We have the Tribe Tutor Zone. There are lots of resources out there to support students academically. Dean Zeman also talked a little bit about our midterm grades. We work with both the students and the faculty advisors to alert folks to midterm grades that fall in that marginal or unacceptable range, to provide time to have those conversations. And we've also worked really closely with the registrar's office to actually tease that timeline apart a little bit. Midterm grades are due before the withdrawal deadline. So if a student does need to work through that decision-making process, again, whether that's through their faculty advisors or folks in our office, we're available to help. So just remind your students that it might not be as bad as they think. There's time to work through it. We're willing to help. And again, there's a whole variety of resources available.
That's wonderful. Thank you. And if you all have any other questions, please feel free to ask. We have about five more minutes to answer any questions that you have. In terms of students who are declaring a major or who have already declared a major, what if they get to the midterm period and they realize, this is their first semester in their major specific classes, and really they're just not vibing with it like they thought they would? What do they do?
I can talk about that. First of all, if it depends how many classes they've taken in their major and whether this really isn't the fit for them. I've certainly had a lot of students over the years who maybe came in with an idea what they wanted to do in their first year and really didn't like the class, and that was fine. It's like better to figure that out now than to figure it out and stick with something that really isn't a good fit for you, or you're not enjoying it. Or you could add two majors. Sometimes students come in, say the major that will get them the job and the major that they really love. I actually don't love that, but it is something that practical as well as this other more enjoyable aspect. And that's the beauty of William and Mary. You can do both of those, a minor or a major, or just have a major in lots of other classes and other areas. That's our liberal arts and sciences perspective. So now, if it's a different situation, if it's in the junior year and you have done almost all of your major classes and you have a few classes left. But interestingly, I've had two students who came to me recently with that situation exactly last year and decided to switch to psychology as seniors. And they are walking out, one not with a psychology major, but pretty close. And the other managed to fit in a lot of those classes. And so it's never too late. You can always, pick up classes after you graduate and change career directions. So I think the key is that at William & Mary, we're teaching students how to think, how to communicate. You can do that in a variety of different majors. And the major doesn't always predict what you're going to do when you leave William & Mary.
I think to follow up on what Dean Zeman said, I think so much of it is figuring out what exactly is going on that they don't like. So sometimes it's a matter of, it's just this one specific class and you just I'm going to throw statistics under the bus here. You just have to get through statistics. And then once you get that done, you're excited about everything else. And so sometimes it's a matter of teasing apart exactly where that stumbling block is for them. Or sometimes it is a matter of they've taken a couple of those intro classes and it's not sticking, it's not working for them. And then maybe it's a matter of having that conversation around course correction. But again, that's where, whether it's folks in the Dean of Students office or their faculty or academic advising, any of us would be available to talk to a student to work through whatever that issue is.
Wonderful. Thank you. That was the last of our questions. So what I'm going to do is end us with one brief piece of advice you have for families as they support students during this time.
I'd say take a deep breath. Often this is the time of year, especially for our first year students, that you may get that panicked text or panicked phone call when you're not necessarily expecting it. It's okay to not have to be a little overwhelmed. It's okay to have some stress. It is okay for you to tell your student everything is going to be okay. So I always say, your student best and help them with the capacity that they want your help. I have two teenagers right now, and neither one of them think I'm an expert on anything and don't necessarily want my advice. And I'm really hoping that they're going to come back to us in a few years when they get a little older. But I guess my only advice is to be patient with this process and know that we do have ways to help students if they need us, and they need you as well.
I know it always helps me when I'm feeling overwhelmed, and I still feel completely overwhelmed at times now as dean, and it is putting it in perspective. So for me, is in 1 year, will this matter? In 5 years, will this matter? Will it matter if I have a B versus a C or an A minus instead of an A? No, obviously not. So for the most part, I think it's trying to put some perspective. You have a little bit more distant than your students will have when they're here in the midst of it. So trying to help them to take the step back and reduce a little bit of the pressure on them, because then they'll learn better if the pressure's off.
I think similar to Dean Sykes, if your student is texting you or calling you because they're stressed out, I mean, first off, grade A parenting right there, that you are the first person that they reach out to in that moment. Gold star for that. I hope my boys will follow that trajectory. And I think to follow up with that, giving them some space and giving them kind of the opportunity to think through it, and, follow up with them a day later or follow up with them a couple of days later to check in and see how they're going. As we all know, in those moments, it's moments of panic and you're feeling overwhelmed, and sometimes you just need to vent. And so I think also recognizing that as the parental student family student dynamics are changing, that's part of the change too, is they're calling you to vent, and it's not necessarily for you to step in or to solve the problem, but just to be a set of listening ears and a tender heart and to follow up with them. So not only for you to take a deep breath and kind of and let your student go through that moment, but also encourage your student to do the same.
If I had any advice, it would be to be understanding of your student situations. I know as students here at William & Mary, all of our students did very well in high school or did very well in their community colleges. They're used to getting very high grades. They're used to being in the top percentages of students in their class. When they get here, sometimes it's a little bit different than the experience they had in high school, whether it's because there's less assignments or there's more tests or they're weighted differently or they don't know how to study for those classes. I know I had a similar experience. I got here and my second semester went terribly, and I went home and mom was not happy. And I had to just ask her to trust me and believe in me and know that I did it in the past and that I would right the ship. And so she gave me the space and the freedom I needed to be able to come back here and plug into the resources that I needed to and figure things out. So be understanding and be supportive if you can. And I can't tell you one thing I've noticed since I've been here, how many of our students freak out about some of the smallest academic things. As Dean Zeman pointed out, sometimes they're really worried that this 1C is going to be the blemish that won't allow them to be successful in their career when they leave, or that one withdrawal that they absolutely feel like they cannot have on their record. It'll be okay. And it's sometimes working with your child and your student, as Dean Sykes had said, you know them the best, to calm them and to help them to put it in a perspective. And it helps to have understanding support system that you can go to.
My advice would be to trust us. Trust that we are here to support you. We are here to support your students. Trust that we know that we're doing what we're doing and that we are here to help your students navigate their time here. Trust that you have chosen William & Mary. Trust that your student has chosen William & Mary, and that we will be here for your students every step of the way. So trust us.
That's great advice. Thank you, Shanae.
Well, thank you all so much for being here with us and spending your lunch hour with us. We greatly appreciate it. We hope we were able to answer some of your questions today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to send those to families@wm.edu and we will answer those. But with that, we are ending. Thank you so much.
Bye, everybody. See y'all.